My name is John Belber, and behind my carrot mask, made by my sister-in-law Llewellyn, I often present, with help, workshops. And spring into summer is a lovely time here at Holly Hill Farm in Cohasset, Mass, to begin with planting and growing. The farmers start in late February with seeds. Seeds chosen from organic farmers and growers based on a master plan meant to grow seeds and seedlings, seeds into seedlings and plants for home gardeners, for home farmers, right? Ambitious gardeners are farmers, and for the farmers, Derek and Sophia, who are here cultivating and tending to about 2.5 acres of production here at Holly Hill Farm. We are fortunate here at Friends of Holly Hill Farm year round in the growing of organic vegetables, flowers, herbs, and fruit. It happens adjacent to some wonderful private woods and trails. It's adjacent to barns and buildings that date back to the 1700s. At the farm, we have received some questions that people have asked me, and I'm joined again by our friend and colleague and wonderful farm teacher, Sally Ross Orman, who brings not only great experience gardening and growing on her own through experimentation, through practice, through making good, happy, healthy compost, and also joined by Janice McPhillips, who has arranged these with Lydia's Zoom. Thank you, Lydia Delfio, and Liza's tech work, in which you might find some links and information to further enhance what we can share today. So Janice is doing some wonderful video. I'm hoping you're hearing our audio clearly as we are learning to speak from the diaphragm through our masks out to you, folks like Eva Haber, who is interested in a workshop, Sue Hess, Kathleen Larson, who asked a good long question we'll get to later, Gail Otis, Aaron Whitmore, Ginger Jensen asking about native plant companion. Today, as a little bit what we did last week, we're going to talk about companion planting. And what is the notion? And what is the way, especially for the home gardener, to get the most, to utilize the bits and pieces of our growing spaces, be it a 4x4 foot bed, or a 4x8 foot bed, or several different 4x8 foot beds. We can learn from the farmers to see how they're utilizing their fields and how they pull crops in together that are compatible companions. We are doing our growing here in the education garden nearby to the animals who call this place home. We are trying to mirror and mimic the farmers so that we can also get the most out of our wonderful growing spaces. Steve Ivis on a guided walk told me that nature abhors a vacuum. So if nature does not like to have that empty space, weeds would like to grow there, other crops would like to grow there. We have to figure out how to either allow for those weeds or how to fill that space with plants that grow up, like the dancing plants, the peas that go up the vine, or the taproots of carrots that go down deep into the ground. And what about the ones in between that dominate a lot of space horizontally? So there's lots to consider here as we think about companion planting and that concept of what it means to really put plants together. We're going to cover a couple of different things today. Questions might come in more. jon@hollyhillfarm.org is my new wonderful email to reach me with further questions if after this workshop there are still some lingering things that you'd like to figure out, still some follow-up. We're an educational resource here. We do not know everything, yet we know a lot and a lot of enthusiasm and experience and efforts to try to help and be a resource for you, for your successful growing. It is late May. It is a wonderful time in which you might want to try to incorporate some of these ideas on perennials, right? Plants come back every year. They respond every year. They are perennial. Annuals, plants started by seed that you could put into the ground right now directly as seed, to buy a seedling that was started here at the garden center, preferably here at the Hill, where we grow many different seeds and seedlings, seeds into seedlings. And just lastly, on a business note here, many of you have been able to purchase through our store.hollyhillfarm.org platform to buy seedlings starting in April with some seeds and some seedlings and some little baby plants and some cool weather crops, graduating on into the tomatoes and the basil and the eggplant. Jasmine Callahan, our plant sub manager, will continue to put items and plants and varieties and flowers and natives and herbs all on that store.hollyhillfarm.org with pictures, with descriptions, with information about spacing and compatibility onto our platform there. So we're going to keep on selling, keep on growing, and keep on having the opportunity for you. It may feel like, oh boy, they're running out of stuff in terms of plants, but we'll continue to refresh and grow. If we're here in September talking about planting evening Zoom live, we might be talking about succession planting and how much longer can we put new lettuce seeds in the ground in September. So there's lots to cover. Right now, let's backtrack to where we are. It's late May. There's lots of time to work with our garden and understand the crops that are here.
Okay.
I was on a roll.
And I was on a roll.
About the farm and companion and compatibility. And I knew three sisters,
Oh, wait.
Sarah, Catherine.
So, do you want me to talk about some companion plants?
We're back live. Thank you for sticking with us, folks. Thank you, Lydia, Liza,
Everybody
Janice.
The people that are watching. So, as I was saying, I was talking about companion planting, farmers learning from nature because nature always does it right. In nature, you're always certain trees growing with each other, certain plants growing with each other. Because there's a relationship that they have with each other, most of the relationship happens under the soil, but there's still a lot that happens in the air and between them. So in your home garden, what we try to do is simulate that symbiosis, as they say, that companionship, and find the plants that can actually not only grow with each other, but actually help each other's growth, or help each other's flavor, or help each other's immune system, or help each other's yield. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to choose companion planting for your home garden. The one obvious reason is to get more yield, right? A lot of us has very limited space in our gardens, and there's a lot of brown empty space. Sometimes we just cover it with newspaper and such, but all of that space is still available if you know which combinations of plants can help each other grow, and also which plants don't do well together. So companion planting increases yield, space usage, helps with attracting pollinators for the plants that need pollinating, helps to improve the health of the immune systems of the plants, and also creates barriers for insects and actually even rabbits and deers if you know which ones to plant. So there's a lot of reasons why it's smart to do companion planting within your garden, because it enhances almost every part of growing. There's a lot of plants, as Johnny was talking about, are perennial or seem to be perennial. The ones that are staying in the ground, like rhubarb and asparagus and such, they have their own little what we call biome or chemistry underneath the soil. And you don't want to plant certain plants next to it, but there's definitely plants you can plant next to these perennials that will help them grow, again, enhance their vitamins and such.
Such
and
as?
you have to learn this. Well, a lot of what I like to refer to is look on the internet, because we don't know absolutely every single thing. But the garlic family in particular, the alliums, all of those kind of plants are really good plants in general to keep things out of your soil. The nematodes and the funguses and stuff actually act as almost like a barrier to some insects and animals as well. But like garlic was planting in October, so it's almost like a perennial. Now, do I want to wait this entire rectangle until July, until we can pull it out of the ground just for garlic? Well, there's plenty of space between the garlic for certain plants to grow. And Johnny has a couple in his hands over here.
Yep, and I just want to also mention as we planted the garlic, without getting too deep into a garlic workshop come October, or a garlic festival, if we're able to do so, we put a lot of seaweeded leaves down to help protect the garlic, so just the garlic will pop through as it did in February, and to help enrich the soil. So this soil is giving its all to the garlic, but because it's been protected, because it's been enriched by compost and seaweed, we're able to look a little bit at the sides right here, and as Sally said, on the in-betweens, and lo and behold, I have a lettuce start. So, with permission of the farmer driving by, this lettuce start can tuck in right at the side. Now the garlic's gonna be in here until July. The lettuce, well on its way, started by seed here in the greenhouse. I would give another couple of weeks of this good warm sun and this long amounts of daylight before we're ready to harvest some of those leaves.
Right, and also lettuce tends to be pretty fragile. We think of lettuce as one of those cool weather plants, right? So what happens is it actually gets shaded a little bit by the tallness of the plants. So one of the reasons why lettuce is actually good, what we would call a neutral companion. It's not going to hurt other plants by growing around it. It's not necessarily going to help it in a lot of ways, but it's not going to damage the relationship with the soil in this particular plant.
And that root block I showed you is not going to take up a lot of space or a lot of nutrients. It's not going to pull a lot of nutrients. There's plenty of nutrients in there to help feed the lettuce that was just transplanted, as well as continue to feed the garlic.
Right, so things that might attack lettuce, some of the cutworm or maybe even aphids and such, they're going to be dispelled because of the garlic here. And so the garlic, it acts as its savior and also shades it. And the lettuce is not really being bothered by it. So it's kind of like a good big brother companionship, something taking care of them. They're not really exchanging. A lot of times when you see, if you look on the internet and you just type in any kind of plant, what's good companion plant to something, blah, 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 and you'll have 15 different answers. But a lot of times companion plants are good if they go to seed, which we never really let lettuce do. A lot of it has to do with their flowers, or what happens to do with the aromas or the aerosolations of some of their chemicals in the air. But lettuce is pretty what I call a neutral companion. Not going to bother too many things. And because it doesn't really like super hot weather, it's nice that it's shaded and shaded with the garlic. So carrots. Yeah.
May I?
Yes.
So I have some carrot seeds right here. And lo and behold, there's another row in between here because we planted our garlic straight, not narrow, in rows of this long, wonderful bed built by Don. And there's a little space right down there. And what do you know about carrots? They go down deep into the ground. They do send up their sprouts of stem and carrot tops, right?
Right.
But there's wonderful opportunity, 58 days to maturity, for us to place a carrot sign gently between our, as I said earlier, our enriched, healthy soil. And you know what else? Addressing one of Kathleen Larson's questions beforehand, thanks for writing in, about success and buying plants and buying transplants and starting from seed. Not every seed grows. I'm going to get a little philosophical on this. So you're going to try different things. You need to try. This is one way, this companion planting is to try for success. We want every seed to grow. We are trying to have success by using companion plantings. If something's not working on one crop or not as well, then maybe another crop will come through.
Well, that has a lot to do with the types of soils too, right?
Right.
So carrots in general like a little bit more of a sandier soil than a really rich soil like the garlic's been growing in. But we've had pretty much a good success here as long as there's drainage, because it's a tap vegetable. It needs drainage so that the tap root or the carrot itself doesn't rot in the ground. So that's why it tends to go for a little bit more clayish soil. And I plant my carrots and my beets between my garlic rows because by the time I'm pulling this out in July, my carrots are already about halfway done. And again, the symbiosis between that is that there's actually an increase in nutrients in the carrots because of the garlic. The garlic is putting out its allium chemicals in the soil to keep out nematodes, which are microscopic little worms that might eat away at the carrot. Also, it's keeping things like bunnies away from the carrots because they don't like the allium family, which is the garlic and the onions and such. So in one plot right here, you have at least three different crops. You can be growing 4 different crops growing all at the same time in a little small box like this.
Now, can I ask a question?
Sure.
How will you pull your garlic out? Garlic will come out in July. Those carrots needed how many days?
58 days. So that puts us, let's say, 2
months.
months, 30 days in a month approximately.
That's
And so that puts us into June,
end of July.
end of July. So
Okay.
around the same time, you'd also pull that garlic out gently.
Yeah, you pull it out. I mean, you're not going to be taking it out with a shovel. You're going to be pulling it up right. And then guess what you can do? After that's been pulled out, you can put another successive row of carrots and beets in there. So then you have ones that are coming out in late August or whatever, and then you're coming out the ones that are coming out in the fall.
That sounds like another workshop, a succession.
Succession
planting.
planting workshop. We've
As
had good success, and by we, I mean Janice has had good success showing Uncle Willie's beans for a nice white bean hummus in the fall, right after the garlic comes out. We would like to hear other suggestions of workshops that interest you. We have a wonderful resource of knowledgeable talent here at the farm. I only know so many things, and it's wonderful for us to explore other topics for workshops: succession planting, beekeeping, compost making, soil regeneration, sustainability on an organic farm. We can cover different things with notice. So please do email to us and let us know, as you have been
Or
to so kindly sign up for these workshops and these programs.
or fill out the survey. Liza, can you possibly post the link to the survey in the chat?
Thank you, Liza. Liza is live in the green room, working back behind the scenes on links and connections and helping us with questions and audio.
All right, where are we planting next?
Well, we're not going to plant this. I'm just going to show it because this is
Oh.
the plant sale.
Oh,
Talk
got it.
about some real good plants
It
right
has-
available
has
tomorrow.
available. Now, those of you who love tomatoes and who grow tomatoes, we're kind of familiar with some companion planting knowledge already, right? So tomato plants are really prone to a lot of diseases, insects, and a lot of things like cutworm and a bunch of other things. One got our plant the other day over there. So we have planted a lot of things. So traditionally, basil is grown with tomatoes. Somebody wrote in about having pots of tomatoes, what could be growing good with it. So basil plant actually enhances the flavor of your tomatoes, if you can believe this.
Both
And-
while growing and in a spaghetti sauce at the end.
Right. And also it puts out the aromatics, the oils, just like the rosemary, lavender, and all those are really good aromatic type herbs. And that helps to dispel certain kind of caterpillars, moths in particular, or the hornworm caterpillar, which is a moth larvae. So this acts as basically a enhancer of flavor of the tomato and also keeps bad bugs away. This other one that most people are familiar with are marigolds. They're bright, they're colorful. Again, they're a pollinator plant because they're going to attract the bugs, the bees and the butterflies and such to the colors. But tomatoes have to be pollinated. So you're going to say, come on over here and pollinate me here, with these being around here, as well as one of these star, what I call companion plants, marigolds. Besides being a pollinator, again, in their root system, they put out chemicals in the soil that actually help with I would call it like the immune system, and helps kill the fungus in the soil. So these two plants are great companions to tomato. And it kind of reminds me of what we call the Three Sisters, which is our traditional lesson in companion planting. The Iroquois Indians and a lot of the Native Americans of the countries taught us this.
Can we take a walk down there?
I don't know whether we'll lose transmission or not.
Well, Jazz will let us know.
But
We'll
the Three
try.
Sisters, we could talk about Three Sisters, but we can talk about it.
We
The
have an
Three
example.
Sisters, which we usually learn in 3rd grade when we talk about colonization and people coming on over here, for the Europeans coming over here and learning how to plant in New England. And they learned lessons from the 20,000 or more years of growth in this area of planting. But the reason why Three Sisters is a great lesson is because it teaches the idea behind companion planting. Because Native Americans did not have written word, all of their lessons were told in story. lessons that we still use today. And
let's name those 3 crops that are stand-ins for the 3 sister plantings.
okay, so the 3 sisters is corn. We can call it maize if you'd like. Corn, which grows tall and lanky, but it's a real nutrient sucker. It takes a lot of nutrients, in particular nitrogen. Nitrogen is one of those basic elements that makes things green, helps in formation of tissue in plants. It's all over or around us. So corn is, very good as far as a food plant goes, but it's really hard on the soil. When we monocrop, like most of our country monocrops, plants 1 crop at a time, it's really poor for the soil. Takes the nutrients out, and basically their answer is to use a bunch of chemicals. But if you plant it with beans, which is the second sister, and the second sister is considered the baby. It's this little tendril that grows up, and it's all nitrogen, but it has one of these beautiful blessings. It actually can take nitrogen gas from the air, which all plants do, by the way, to make their green, to make their chlorophyll, to build structure in their body. But the legumes, which is what the bean and the pea is, along with some other plants, can take that nitrogen, store it in, and manufacture it, put it into a form that goes down into their roots. And a nitrogen form is called an ammonium sulfate, actually. But what's cool about these particular plants is that they have this relationship under the ground with a bacteria that lives in the ground. Let's see, what's the word that they're called? Ribo something or other. It's a bacteria that lives in the ground that is attracted to these legumes. And what happens is this relationship, it actually infects the roots of the pea or the bean plant. And so that it starts to create nodules. And those nodules actually hold the nitrogen in place. It feeds the bacteria, carbonic acid and a few other things for its growth and its energy. And then the bacteria is actually helping the plant hold on to nitrogen so that it's a great nitrogen source. And even in plant death, that nitrogen is going to go into the soil. A lot of times the farmers here will put what we call green manure down on our farm, the land during the fall to let it grow slowly over the winter time. And they're all nitrogen fixing plants, buckwheat and wheatgrass, and all these have the ability to take it like all the other plants, but they have a reason to store it into the soil as well. So second sister is the bean plant, which uses in its companionship way, it feeds that corn, and then the corn itself acts as a little trellis for this bean plant to start to grow up to the sun. And the third plant is the sister squash. And sister squash has big broad leaves that acts as a mulch that keeps the soil from evaporating. Most squash plants have little hairy spiky leaves and along their stems to keep animals out. And it acts as a cover over the soil so that all 3 of them can keep the nutrients. The peas are still, the beans are still feeding the squash as well. What's unique about those companion plants is that all 3 of them eaten together are a complete meal. So it's a really cool lesson for children, but an overall lesson in the Iroquois culture, it's really about more than companionship. It's about unity. It's about a thing is stronger when everybody combines themselves together. So the collective work that the 3 sisters do provide much more abundance than if they were grown individually. And it's also a reflection of their society. It takes a village, right? To grow human beings. And that's exactly what the companion lesson's really about.
And if you picture corn growing on cornfields of Iowa, thank goodness they're doing that. And that's got its wonderment. However, here on a small scale, what we're talking about here, and if you imagine, as Sally alluded to with the history component, there weren't seed stores to go online to in the 1600s when pilgrims started to arrive to these shores. And there were lessons to be learned and lessons still to be learned about how not only are those 3 sisters working together, the corn, bean, and squash, and there are beans that grow to be bush-sized, and there are beans that are pole beans that climb up the pole of the corn stalk. Those 3 sisters working together as a meal, as a unit together, also provide their own seed. So one thing we love to do, and again, I'm getting into ahead of myself for the autumn. But in the fall, you can show a dried corn husk with all those beautiful seeds around the corn cob there, some of which you can eat and survive over the winter, some you can save for the following spring. Same with the squash seeds inside of a winter squash. A winter squash is so named so that you could have that squash available in the wintertime, although it's picked in autumn. The pumpkin seeds, the butternut, the delicata, the acorn, those are all wonderful winter squashes.
There are also seeds that you can eat individually.
And seeds you can eat individually as well as saved. And the beans, of course, in their pod. So I want to address quickly Kathleen Larson's question about starting and trying to do companion planting at home and starting with seeds. It's been a very difficult spring to get seeds started in the ground. We've had some crop failure with some peas. We've had to put new peas back in. Starting from seed is a good strategy. It's often hard to do when the weather, which it was in April, was quite up and down in terms of its cold nights, very close to freezing, if not below freezing, and then warm up a little bit during the day. So it's hard to start seeds in the ground or in the house and then harden them off and acclimate them to the outdoors. So this is not just a pitch to buy our seedlings here, but just know that the farmers, when we're starting seeds here, they're in a controlled environment, trying to keep the heat at a consistent level to get those plants off and ready. Because anytime you move a plant outside, as we're doing here, you know, it's got to be the right conditions for those plants to have started well under supervision and observation, and then be acclimated to the outdoors, and then be able to work together. So now is a better time for putting seeds directly in the ground,
Right.
because we're more consistent on warmth.
This is Kathleen's question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed, Kathleen, you had a wide range of seeds going there.
Yes.
And I'm imagining your squash seed or whatever that you had probably was the one that needed to get out of the pot the quickest because they grow the fastest. And you probably put it out too soon. We're just now putting our hot weather plants out because finally the air and the soil are starting to be around 50 degrees roughly on average.
Yeah, I saw Sophia with a tray of summer squash ready to go out today for
Right.
transplanting.
So in answer to your question, try again. Like the lettuce should be able to be seeded right now.
Directly in the
other
ground.
ones, right. So the other thing too is don't give up. We all have failures. One of the reasons I buy my tomato plants is because I just need 8 of them. And so for me to buy a whole packet and grow them, I don't need them all. And sometimes maybe over the years, you'll figure out what's worth buying and having started for yourself. It's hard to do it at home because you don't have the perfect conditions. Most people put seeds in a thing and put it near their windowsill. They get all long and leggy and then they fall over like this and then you put it outside and go, yay. But don't give up. Basil's really hard. We had 1 year disastrous year in the greenhouse. All of our basil.
Basil, powdered mildew. Yeah.
Keep it up, as they say. Keep it up.
I'll give a little plug here. The farmers are constantly reading and learning what grows well together. These seed packets can offer a lot of information about spacing and about whether or not you could fit a row of lettuce in or put beets, as Sally mentioned, a good root crop, down next to your tomatoes. Those leaves of the beets will help protect that soil as the leaves of the Three Sisters squash did. And that'll allow the tomatoes to grow up without the interference of other weeds, but just one planned crop. So take a look at those seed packet informations. They talk about spacing, how deep. They talk about how far apart. And they talk about days to germination. So when you can expect to see those seeds come up out of the ground. There's a lot of good information that the seeds can give you. Any plants we sell are going to have information too. If it says kale plant at 18 inches apart from another kale plant, that's an accurate estimation because 18 inches, if I measure with my 2 hand spans at 9 inches each, kale is a big broad leaf, a good thick stem, same with tomatoes and eggplants and peppers. Follow along with that. It doesn't seem like a small tomato or a small kale plant is going to need 18 inches, 1.5 feet between the next planting, but that really gives time for that root system to go down into the ground and get established.
Right. So, and then there's the companion plants, and then there's the not so nice and friendly companion plants. So I would never grow beans or peas in near the garlic. Garlic, along with a lot of those allium plants and stuff, put that it's a sulfur-based compound in the soil that actually interferes with the bacteria's ability to sense that it's because the bacteria in the soil is one of those things that help feed the plants through their I can't remember the word, but
Rhizomes?
not rhizomes.
Rhizobacteria?
Yeah. So what happens is it actually interferes with their sense of smelling where they're going to get their food is really what it is. So I would never put them near here. There's certain plant combinations you don't want to put together. There's something like kohlrabi, which is one of my favorite plants. It does nothing like kohlrabi. It stops things from growing.
An independent plant.
And yet it's part of the brassicas. It's part of the kale family stuff. But that particular one, because it's such a large bulb, for whatever reason, puts out a lot of that chemical and such. Sue Hess has said she plants lots of herbs and basil and oregano and sage and thyme in pots. And do any of these thrive with other herbs or vegetables? Absolutely. Any of those type of what I call Mediterranean plants, they don't really get damaged a lot. If you look in your gardens, they're not the ones really being nibbled a lot and stuff like lavender and such. They put out a smell that other insects don't like.
Yeah, let's clarify those perennial herbs. Lavender, sage, one of my favorite. Rosemary, thyme, chives, oregano, thyme. Those are good hardy perennials. You're right. They do not get nibbled. That are good companions. And they come back in the springtime, great for cooking and things.
Right. So they would be great near your tomatoes that you're saying you're growing, even some of your lettuces and such.
And then the annuals, maybe a little bit more tender. Basil is a very tender annual. Cilantro is in between. It's an annual, but it's a bit more hardy than a basil.
Right. We also talk about plants that you might want to plant to attract the insects and the pollinators. Nasturtium's a wonderful one. Nasturtium's an edible flower, but it also is a great companion plant to many, many plants, including tomatoes, in its relationship. So it's not taking away anything. It actually encourages uptake in flavors and such. Another great herb that a lot of people, it's kind of gone out of favor, and I don't know why, but it's called borage. And borage has the most gorgeous blue flower. Big,
also edible.
Leaves, yep, the whole flower and the leaves are actually edible and such like that. But it's a great pollinator plant, and it also sells seeds. So I have it growing year after year in my gardens, and I'll just find it and just leave it because the bees go crazy on it. So you want to encourage pollinators when you're putting plants that need to be pollinated, right?
And we talked about perennials, come back every year. Talk about annuals that you need to sow the seed every year. There are hardy annuals. There are plants that, and biannuals that winter over and come back the next year. But cilantro is good at making seed after that, and it's coriander, and they can drop their seed and it can grow again. Kale can flower and make seed pods and drop and grow again. So there are some hardy self-seeding annuals. I want to also just quickly mention some fun ideas of companion planting. Why not try a salsa garden? Why not try one box that might have a couple of hot peppers? If it was I would put some really hot peppers, but put some hot peppers or mild peppers in there. Put some onion plantings in there. Maybe pick one of your garlics if that's nearby. Tomato, tomatillo. Have fun with those companions to see if they could help you make a nice salsa. Same with the idea of a pizza garden. Vegetarian pizza garden, wherein we're unable to provide cheese from the cows or the goats, but you can go lactose-free and you can plant, tomatoes and spinach and basil, whatever you like on your pizza. That could be a fun companion planting idea, is maybe in a circle or a square like they do in the sheets of Italy, square sheet pan pizza. So that could be fun.
Right. And then we've talked a little bit in the past when we were talking about tomatoes, about things that don't get planted together because they share the same kind of chemistry, and they're more prone to give each other diseases. Like potatoes and tomatoes, you don't want to really plant them too close to each other. What's too close? That's the question. But if you've had a problem with growing tomatoes one year or potatoes, do not plant them in the same thing. A lot of that has to do with what we call crop rotation. So if I'm growing something steadily on one side one year, I'm going to try to put it on the other side of my garden or gardens for the next year, so that I'm not encouraging repeated growth of funguses or
any diseases or
flea
worms
beetles
or bugs.
that kind of stuff. So it's about tricking nature. I thought a little side story about it. When I went to Italy about 7 years ago, and I was visiting this gorgeous vineyard, and I saw all these beautiful yellow flowers in the rows, And so these were their pollinators that they were trying to attract, obviously, to pollinate the grapevine. But they used a really interesting thing. I thought it was pheromone chemistry, where the insects that are bad for the grape, like the vine borers and that sort of thing, they would spray the pheromone to the female pheromone of the vine borer there. So all the males would hatch out and come look for the females to mate, but they weren't around because it was too early. And so by the time the females did hatch out and start to fly around, then the males had already died off, because they're usually, breeding seasons usually like 24 hours or 2 days or 3 days. So a lot of that has to do with what we do here as well, but it's more for plants, helping plants, and not necessarily insects. But it's really about tricking your pathogens and tricking and helping your soil stay rich and nutritious so that the plants themselves can thrive.
Yeah. I want to address a wonderful question from Ginger Jensen, who asked ahead of time to us about native plants and how can you companion and make compatible native plants. Well, think about that phrase, native plants. And they were here like Native Americans and are still here, and we are trying to bring back, if they're not here anymore, and recognize that native plantings can grow together as they would have many years ago before we started introducing other crops or other plants, or invasives came to help take over. So think about the native plantings as you would with other plants and flowers that you grow. Look at spacing, look at distance apart from each other, and how they could work together. If one plant is growing tall, a native columbine, maybe some wild strawberries could be your ground cover down below, a native wild strawberry. So
right, native plants are all in families, very similar, like to Queen Anne's lace is actually in the carrot family, right?
Yep.
So you have to kind of look into the family or the genus of the wild plant that you're growing to find out what its attributes are, or what you might find that you can't grow it next to certain foods and stuff, because it has that allelopathic type of relationship under the soil. Will keep other things away from it, like the black walnut tree or the garlic mustard that we talk about, that sort of thing. But native plants can have that ability as well, because that helps them thrive as well. I think about native plants on the beach when I started to understand this and stuff.
coastal.
The beach rose, which would be something that would take a lot of nutrients out of the soil, or the sand, if you will, is usually found, you see beach peas growing along with it. Those beach peas are putting that nitrogen in that little bit of soil and sand. And then the beach rose is losing its leaves in the fall and creating more humus and more soil for the next generation of the seeds to be growing in and stuff. So there's a relationship in nature everywhere. I'm a forager, and I know where to look for certain mushrooms because I know they're always going to be around a certain tree. And so there's a relationship in their chemistry and in their relationship. So learning the relationships that the individual plants in the wild have with their environment is really important before you start sticking them like in your fruit garden and not into your regular garden.
Can we take any questions or any comments? If you people are hearing us and would like to use as a chat room, right, Janice? People can type in. You can ask an audio question.
Or you can
help
unmute yourself.
What was that?
People can unmute themselves if you'd like.
Yeah.
We have two questions from Kathleen and Ginger. Maybe we could start with those from the chat.
Okay.
Kathleen, you want to go ahead?
You want to go, Kathleen? Or I guess I'm unmuted. This is Ginger. Do nasturtiums and marigolds have a role in companion planting? You addressed nasturtiums. I didn't know about marigolds. Maybe I missed it.
Marigold, what's your question?
Do nasturtiums and marigolds have a role in companion planting? But I asked that before they talked about the
Okay.
nasturtiums. So we've got,
Okay.
but I don't know about.
Do you have any lingering question about that, or are you clear?
I didn't get the marigold part, so
Oh, the marigolds. Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about marigolds and the role that they play in companion planting?
Well,
Pollinators?
they're bright and colorful, and they're pollinators, so they're attracting pollinators. They also, if you see sometimes natural products to keep bugs off of things and stuff like that, a lot of them are made in the geranium family or in this particular family as well. It's the compounds in the flesh of the plant that can keep bugs away. So pollinator attracts bugs, but also certain bugs it will keep away because of its plant chemistry, and its roots itself have its own ability to exude those chemicals into the soil that keep other plants or other bugs like nematodes and stuff from growing. So
Here's the flamenco, height of up to 10 to 12 inches, and spacing is 6 to 10 inches apart. So there are 6 marigolds here. Keep in mind, spacing from each other and from the tomato plants who they could be helping and supporting.
right. So if I was going to put it in even in a pot, if I was going to grow a tomato in the pot, I might have 4 of those around it and 2 basils. Again, they're all going to be working kind of symbiotically to help that tomato taste good and to keep the bugs off of it. And, you know, it's not perfect, right? You know, fence is better to keep an animal from eating it. Just another side about the garlic and stuff. If you don't want to devote a whole garden to your garlic like this, you can use it as a little a perimeter fence
Ooh,
and then plant within it in the springtime. So it's still coming around. And again, this is giving up a lot of space if someone only has one small space. So you could use these. You can also intermingle them in your other gardens as well, along with the onions, shallots, any of that kind of family. as
Just
well.
briefly, you had your perennial herbs there. Were they also, could mint be a border? Could mint?
Yeah. So,
Let's take a walk, Jess, up the gardens. We finish up here. Too heavy.
so
Oh
mint,
gosh.
Mint,
right?
contained in a pot. Thank you, Lauren Edmondson, for weeding 10 years ago.
Always put them in pots because they're going to go any place and every place. But
They're even coming out of the pot.
they're fabulous because of the oils, because those oils, when they get brushed up against it, are aromatic. They're great to have around your plants. So keep them in pots, put them around your gardens. You see them all around here. Again, they're keeping aphids and other types of irritating little insects away from some of the plants. Is it perfect? No. But, you know, you can eat it and make a good mojito out of it.
Add it to a lemonade,
Yeah.
boys and girls.
So don't plant them in your garden. Otherwise,
It does take off.
Yeah.
And there is orange mint. There is chocolate mint at PRS. There is spearmint. There's peppermint. So lots of wonderful mints.
and there's catmint. There's a lot of the other mints.
It's a good square stem.
Some people might be familiar with some of the mints that grow as one big plant, and those are keep the mosquitoes off of you as well. So,
And there's a native mountain mint that we are growing here now as we are trying to increase a return to native plantings to add that component to your home garden if possible. Different native plants that we have here as available.
so in references, I know there's a lot of references being shown. This is one that's a very pictorial reference that I have here. And if I have my glasses, do I have my glasses? This comes from Afristar Foundation. And it's just a little pictorial.
Screenshot. You can do a screenshot of that.
It's a little pictorial guide. And it's just very basic.
Available online?
Oh, yeah, that's where I got it.
Afristar.
Afristar Foundation puts it out.
Can you spell that?
AFRISTAR, Afristar Foundation. And it's about, you know, it's promoted by Natural Seeds and such, permaculture. Companion planting. This is the one I have in our garden shed at the
Teak Sherman Community Garden.
yeah, community garden. So it's a quick reference.
Here.
Like my beans right here, it's good with, you know, corn and cucumbers, strawberries, and cabbage, but it's not good with onion and garlic. Again, because it interferes with its nitrogen ability to hold that nitrogen. Beetroot doesn't have any bad companions. So you can grow beetroot with almost everybody. So there's some really simple charts, and then there's some really involved books that you can get down to the nitty gritty of the science. But it's always about making the most out of your space, and also the increasing your yield and the flavor, and hopefully the health of your plants
So
by doing the companion planting.
can I ask a question? Something I've always wondered about. If the seed packet says, what, 6 inches, 8 inches between that kale plant?
18,
18.
ideally.
And that's based on research that shows that they grow best if they have 18 inches of space around them. And then,
Correct. For the root system as well as the width of their leaves.
Right.
branches.
and then you add something in between, you're changing the a plant's ability to draw nutrients and but somehow it works, and maybe it's because of what you said,
Right, and it's
Sally.
also how you're going to grow that particular kale. Like, because they say to grow them 18 inches apart, we also here at the farm grow them literally 1 inch apart as a long trail of baby kale. So we cut it like
Come
this.
along and cut.
So it never gets to be that huge size. And so the roots of the baby kale are only going to go down this deep to begin with, right?
And if you have a
Mm.
kale plant at 18 inches apart and you put lettuce in there for 4 weeks, the kale is still going to be there at the very end as well.
Right.
So it's more about an ideal setting situation that you can get, and then how else could you use that soil. And again, this is a good idea for a workshop on soil, making sure your soil is good and healthy and ready for these different kinds of crops.
That's hard.
All right, so we are almost at 6 o'clock. I think we
Can
are
can
to
I
end.
can I ask
Any
a
more
question?
questions?
Yes, I do have one.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Hi,
You can hear me? This
I
is
can.
Eva. This is Eva. Yes, hi. Would you, my kale, I had some beautiful kale plants last year and it was all eaten by some kind of a moth.
Oh.
Would you put some marigolds with kale together to deter this
What
year?
did you say? Some what? marigolds?
Marigolds, yeah.
Well, the farmers, we are, as an organic farm, the question is about moths and caterpillars. I've definitely seen caterpillars on the underside of kale leaves, and
Yes. And seen the holes they've burrowed through.
Yep. So Eva wants to know, can you?
Hello, Eva. How are you? Thank
Eva.
you for your question.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
The cabbage
Thank you.
moth.
I'm
The kale is in the
enjoying this
brassica
a lot.
family. It is susceptible to moths. Observation is a good way to prevent. Looking under your leaves, looking at the health of your
Yep.
leaves and your plant always keeps you ahead. I have done a soapy spray, 7 parts water to 1 part soapy spray, an all natural soapy spray to spray on that kale plant if you are seeing some activity there.
Sometimes
Okay.
you can get
Yep.
essential oils, like garlic oil, or the marjoram oils. Sweet marjoram is like a great everything plant. So some of these oils you can actually put in a volume with water and spray on them as well. You're trying to deter the white cabbage moth. And what I grow in my garden is something called bronze fennel. It's not an edible fennel. It's big, beautiful fennel, but it can really spread as well. But what it attracts is the parasitic wasps. And those parasitic wasps lay their eggs in live caterpillars. And so I always ask them to come into my garden to help me with those white cabbage moths. But again, they come out in a certain season, you'll see them all around. So go out and check on your plants. You want to try to take and see if there's any eggs or whatever else on it. Or pick the leaves that have already been started to be scavenged.
So we're selling a hot pepper oil spray.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Correct. And what is that meant? I haven't read the label. What is that meant for?
Same idea.
Okay.
Prevention and once you've identified any type of
Okay. Is it on your website?
Things like rabbits, chipmunks, and those sort of things because they don't like the flavor that hot.
Oh,
Eva, what
that's
did you say?
awesome.
What was the
That-
second
do
part
you-
there?
Can I find it on the farm store?
Yes, if you go to store.hollyhillfarm.org,
Okay. Okay.
it's under
okay.
soils
amendments.
and amendments. And
Okay.
it's a hot pepper
Spray.
Okay.
Spray bottle.
Yeah. That's great against chipmunks. Yeah, that's helpful too because the squirrels eat my tulips and all that. So that's what I actually try to do it to put a paprika around the plants and stuff like that. So this is
Yeah.
the same idea. Another quick
Okay.
question, and then I let you go. I'm sorry.
Sure.
You mentioned that you should switch up the plants in your. I have three beds, and I tend to do my tomato plants always in the same one, but you said you should switch it up around. The only problem is that I know that tomato plants need way more, their roots go down deeper. So that's my deep box there. So
Yeah, that's a
and
problem.
the others are the kale and basil and all that stuff doesn't need that much deepness. So is there anything I can do? I need to dig the others too, I guess, deeper too for the tomatoes to be able to.
Well, we're trying to practice no-till farming here, so I guess I would not encourage you to dig. It used to be when I first started gardening, the thought was to double dig your beds. Remember that? Which would mean dig about what, 2 feet, 18 inches to 2 feet down. Her question, I don't know if you could hear, was how can you plant a tomato in a bed that's not deep?
Well, what's
Doug,
deep?
How deep do the not so deep beds go?
Oh, that's now here we go with my inches and centimeters and maybe 40 centimeters. Can you
Divided
think
by
that?
2.5, 40
yeah.
divided by 2. So that
Yeah.
sounds like,
I'm sorry.
divided by 2 is 20. So it's a
Email
little,
me.
yeah. Yeah, why don't you email John? We can have a conversation offline
Okay.
about that.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Great. Okay, I do
Have
that.
you ever
yes.
tried to grow tomatoes in that bed?
Not yet. No, no, not yet.
I think it's for tomatoes, it's really about soil fertility, not so much depth.
Well, when I pull out my tomato plants, I can have a root system this much. So
Yeah.
it depends on really the soil and such. You can grow tomatoes in the pots, right? That's only 2 feet deep right in there,
Can you
Okay.
see that pot?
right?
Yes, I can. I can.
Permanent tomato, not meant to get very big, and therefore a compatible root system.
Yeah, I did order those. I bought those little, the miniature kinds and all
Okay.
that. Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
try those. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're
I'm all
welcome.
set.
Anybody
Yeah.
else have any other questions? No?
We
All right.
thank you all. We thank you, Liza, Lydia, Janice, Sally. Wonderful for the questions they asked me and asked Johnny at the farm. I'm delighted to turn and ask you, Sally, some good answers. Thanks for coming. Keep emailing us. Complete the survey if you can, and give us other workshop ideas. We're here to help and be a resource.
And make a companion.
Companion
It's better with the companion.
at a distance and masked and together.
Awesome. Thank you
so
guys.
much.
Breathe through the mask.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.